think most people have attended the 5-day training for SSEG before, but this really builds on that. So for anybody who either hasn't attended the 5-day training or maybe feels a little bit uncomfortable with some of the aspects, just know that you might find this overwhelming. So then don't stress too much, but we don't have time to go into a lot of those details. There is another session on this training scheduled for later in the year. So if you want to rather reschedule, more than welcome. I think there are also people who haven't attended the 5-day training, but who's actually done the work previously. So for them, it should be much easier. Okay, so next up is the slide that Flora has spoken about. Myself with DNV, I'm Gerard Botha. So I've been part of this program as well for many years, and I think all of us learn as we go along, especially as we get the questions, because then we can understand where people get stuck. And Dix Island isn't directly involved with this training, but definitely the related training. Maybe I should just say, if I missed it, Mark, GIZ, of course, is the funders for this program. So let's look at the expected outcomes. And this is pretty straightforward. The idea is that once you completed this training, that you would have a sense of comfort, at least to process and approve applications larger than 1 megawatt. Now, if somebody asks me what is different, because this the 5-day training, that's for small scale embedded generation, less than 1 megawatt, I almost want to say there's very little difference. The bigger things are that you actually do need to do a grid impact study, and that grid code compliance becomes more of an issue. We then started with this guideline that I think has been shared with everybody, and it's very interesting to see the amount of detailed things that do pop up. The smaller generators, it's a little bit easier just to let things flow. But with these large ones, there's a little bit more attention to detail that's required. So in order to hopefully help you, that you have that sense that you can do this, we'll talk about the application form. We do not really talk about a lot of detail about the simulation results, because that is a course, it's 2 courses that Dix Island presents. How to do the grid impact studies is an intro course, and then a more detailed course, and how to evaluate those results. Then we do look at the quotations that you issue to the customers, talk about the design that's required, refer the customer to appropriate standards, what contracting is required. And one of the things that do jump out a little bit is this power quality that once again takes a little bit more than what the average municipality is used to. What is your role in terms of commissioning and sign off, and very specifically the grid code compliance? All right. So yes, from my side, thank you. It's a very big group, and it's going to be interesting. But let's look at some of the context. I think everybody knows of the Schedule 2 amendments, but the really pressing issue is, in the first place, shedding, which is once again at stage 5 and 6. I think that's definitely a problem for each and every customer, and that definitely drives more people to want renewable energy, although this document is obviously not solely for renewable energy. It is that you can deal with any type of generator. This is just a screenshot of 6 monthly feedback from our president, where they are putting plans in place to actually end load shedding, at least reduce it significantly. Now, that's 11 days ago, the 1st of January, this was published on the presidency's website. And key progress actions are the update to the Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act. Basically, licensing requirements have been removed for almost all generation. They claim that there's a pipeline of more than 9 gigawatts of generation capacity from private sector projects. I think that stage 5 and 6, that's 5 gig and 6 gig that we need to shed respectively. So if we can get online another 9 gigs, that would really make quite a difference. They've also cut the red tape with environmental impact assessments and things like that. Mark will talk about that a little bit later. And they've also increased the government bid windows, although there's nothing beyond bid window 6 at the moment, but there definitely seems to be plans for further bid windows to be published very soon. So from bid window 5 and 6, they already have, I think, another 2.8 gig that has been signed on. So they've gone through to the next stages. And yeah, they have almost 15 gig in the ministerial determination planned coming up. Let's just look at what we will cover. Once again, it's approving applications larger than 1 megawatt. And what are those steps? Guideline is really trying to give us step by step. Sometimes I'm going to focus on what are the differences from the smaller ones, which everybody should know. Okay, so there's applications, evaluation, quotations, contracting, design, construction, commission, sign off. But what we don't do is, firstly, we don't again look at the smaller than 1 megawatt cases. We are not going to look at details of the simulations. We also assume that the municipality knows how to do their design, and there is not a big difference between the design here. We don't go into too much detail on the grid code compliance. Obviously, also don't look at off-grid installations. So what we've said is there are other courses, for instance, for smaller than 1 megawatt simulations. There are 2 more courses. They obviously dovetail with this. Very high level quickly, the document has 3 sections. One is introductory. Section 2 is really, this is where we're going to spend the most time, next 3 days, and also the financial and billing detail. Before we go into any of the detail, I also want to highlight some of the key definitions. Now, this picture should be fairly self-explanatory to most people attending. In South Africa, we have the vertically integrated utility. So Eskom starts with generation and transmission, going down to distribution. From there, it goes to most of the municipalities, and of course, then to the customer. Now, in terms of the grid code, they've grouped all of these suppliers together as your network service provider. That doesn't include generation, but from transmission, distribution, and all the distributors. Those are network service providers. The term that we prefer to use is not municipality, but rather distributor, and then the customer. Now, what happens with our customers? Most people think of a customer as those people who consume electricity. This is like mindset change that we need. So in the past, we used to have the network service provider, and through the point of supply, POS is standing for, electricity was supplied to the customer. But now we changed that slightly. So, okay, the network service provider can be the Munich distributor or NSP, network service provider. On the customer side, we now have terms like consumer, which is the traditional customer. That's the person who actually uses the electricity, consumes it. We also have, let's go to generator next. That is also fairly entrenched by now because we know of all the IPPs, they are generators. Then the prosumer, that's the person who actually consumes energy from the distributor as well as generates some electricity. That can either feed back into the grid or just be for self-consumption. And another key concept is embedded generator. Now, in terms of the grid code, an embedded generator is one that's connected to the distribution network. So that can still be a pure support generator, or it can be a prosumer. So there's a combination of load and generation. So when we talk about an embedded generator, note it's now not a small scale SS embedded generator. It is simply an embedded generator because we talk about larger than 1 megawatt. But in the first place, embedded generator is connected to the distribution network. And usually the terms that I use is to say that it's behind the meter when we look at a prosumer. So there's load as well as generation behind the point of connection. So that's the next change. Our point of supply is now a point of connection because energy can flow in both directions. And I think one of the mindset changes that I would recommend is that the customer isn't, his primary product isn't the electricity anymore. His primary product is access to the network. I think the grid code has put that kind of mindset in place for a while. Then we've asked in the emails as well if there's anybody who has any applications that they have available to share, please do share it with us. And that's the overview. Yes. So before we can have a coffee break, let's just look at the regulatory framework. And I think most people have a fair idea. But the